Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Wang, and I am the lead organizer of TEDxShakerHS. We'd like to welcome you to our second annual and first virtual TEDxShakerHS conference. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we have 7 wonderful speeches from 7 phenomenal speakers, who we would like to thank for responding with such great flexibility as we've transitioned from our live in-person event to a virtual YouTube live stream.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Yu and I am the co-organizer of TEDxShakerHS. Before we jump in, we'd love to acknowledge everyone who made this event possible, both our original live event and now our virtual streaming. First, our club advisor, Mrs. Wade, for her constant support and guidance throughout this entire school year. Next, our club officers, Tiffany Tang, Ashley Sheffelway, Jethro Lee, John Yin, Chloe Opperman, Yewon Park, Heijin Lee, and Varun Mandeka for their collective work. Another thank you to Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Morris, and Mrs. Gorman for their help in organizing the live event earlier this year. And finally, a big thank you to Mr. Kucher for his enthusiastic support of our virtual event. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, on to our speakers.
Hi everyone, my name is Sneha Molnidi, and today we're going to be talking about creating a way to contribute to our world while being close to home. Let's say that you're having a great day. You got a bonus, your crush asked you out, you got an A on your term paper, and on top of all of that, you found a $100 bill on the ground. So you think, you know what, today I'm going to give this to someone who needs it more than me. So you go online and you look for just that. You know, some charities, UNICEF, the World Wildlife Fund, GLSEN, the American Cancer Society. But then there's a bunch of smaller ones too. And then you see all those sad pictures of sick babies and abused animals. If you donate here, you can give an entire family water for life. But you could also help provide many more people access to job opportunities, or help kids in lower income communities receive a better education, or even provide free STD tests. There are so many options. However, all of these options might not be what they seem. While we might not like to hear this, fraudulent campaigns are mixed in with all of the real ones, and it can be hard to tell what's real and what's not. Big name charities can even sometimes act in corrupt ways and take money from donated funds. False charities use emotionally deceptive names and stories to grab a donor's attention and keep it. In 2018, out of the $1.35 billion donated to charity, $970 million were kept by those running the charity. That amount of money could give 38.8 million people access to clean drinking water for the rest of their lives. Charities like these tend to benefit off the public sharing and recognizing its cause. For example, there's some Instagram accounts that claim to donate every single time their post is liked or shared. However, when people do research beneath the surface, they kind of see that they don't exist. As you can see, I had to block a bunch of my friends out of this post here because they actually liked this post, and a lot of us thought it was real at the time of the Australia wildfires. And the same goes for GoFundMe and other crowdsourcing websites, where it's much easier to lie in the public eye than it is face-to-face. Furthermore, unless the campaign you donate to is an emergency campaign, you can't see your money go to work. And is your money even going towards helping people? Much money donated to charities can go to pay for employees' salaries rather than helping the cause you help to aid, which is important to the running of the charity, but it's also kind of dissatisfying to know that your money isn't going towards what you wanted it to go towards. While we might think it's easy to avoid these problems, it's becoming harder and harder every single day, thanks to the internet. If we can't even be sure that well-known organizations are stealing or misusing our money, how can we contribute? The simple answer is to do it ourselves. Why not? A community-based charitable organization would be a great answer to this problem. It wouldn't have to be a big company. It could be something simple, like a fund for a school food backpack program, creating a social network for local veterans, or sponsoring something that helps students go aid people in other countries. In these situations, not only would change be sure to happen, but it would happen right in front of a community's eyes. Having something like this as a part of everyday life would be new and different to many of us, but would help a lot in changing the dynamics of the places that we live in. A community charity would bring massive benefits not only to the people it would help, but also to the community. The larger the project, the more the community could get involved. For example, if a social network for veterans were created, kids in school could make cards and crafts for them, like you might do once or twice in elementary school. Instead of it being a special event, repeated volunteering at a school could help create a long-term mindset of helping others. As they grow older, kids can feel compelled to do community service uh, as a habit they picked up in their early years. Adults and older students could help plan the events. As for adults, these kind of programs help them meet each other and become a more tight-knit community and increase morale. In lower income communities, this can actually promote a lower crime rate and more of a desire to participate and learn. When multiple communities promote charities such as these, they can create a larger network of ideas and opinions and even do projects together. With good intentions, a community-based charitable organization can blossom into something that helps everyone involved. And you can watch your community grow. Something like this can reduce the amount of money or attention that a fake cause gets and gives more to the community, promoting a sense of positivity and further spreading the idea of doing good around the world. So what's the answer to the $100 bill question? Use it. Use it to start a local charity. Use it not only to help others in need, but to help your community blossom. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rini Rahman. I will be presenting my TEDx talk, TED speech, I'm not sure, in my living room today. Unfortunately, we can't be at school, but here goes. Time. We weren't there when it began, and we probably won't be there when it ends. Some people seem to have too much time on their hands, like they don't know what to do with it, while others feel like they're constantly running out of time and are living in constant fear. We measure time with watches. We track it. We witness its passing with age. But why do we try to conquer it when it inevitably ticks by? Chronophobia is the fear of time. It's characterized by an irrational yet persistent fear of time and the passing of time. It took me 17 years to realize that I wasn't running out of time. It took me 149,018.49 hours to come to the realization that everyone runs on their own time. But what's so frightening about something so relative? Usually, people fear that their time on Earth is limited or have trouble tracking its passing. I was one of those people. Picture this, a junior sitting in a sophomore geometry class, dreading every single moment. And I was that junior. As I sat there in that class, I kept dreading every minute. I kept telling myself, "You're running out of time. There's not enough time to catch up to everyone else." Did you know that teens and adults are more susceptible to mental illness than any other age group? The main factor is academic pressure as well as societal expectations. According to edweek.org, the turn of the 20th century brought rapid social and economic changes, which ushered in a new age for education. In the 1940s, for the first time, half of all seniors graduated high school. The U.S. graduation rate reached its historical high point at the end of the 1960s, with a graduation rate peaking at 77% in 1969. As more and more students go through school, the pressure slowly builds up as students try to achieve top grades and get into competitive colleges. Let's backtrack for a minute. In the 1900s, having a really high IQ wasn't the top priority on everyone's list. But today, in today's society, being intelligent or seeming like you're articulate is highly coveted. No one wants to look stupid today. Feeling inadequate about your intelligence can lead to low self-esteem, which goes hand in hand in the decline in mental health. I struggled with that feeling myself, as my underclassmen took harder classes, and I couldn't even do geometry right. I had the feeling of falling behind took a toll on my learning style, and I stressed that I couldn't catch up. But what is time really? The dictionary definition of time is the ongoing sequence of events taking place: the past, the present, and the future. If something so relative as time can quantify human existence, then just like humans, it must be individual. This is how I came to that conclusion. We are born at a different time and we die at a different time. So someone else's time and their conception of time must be different from mine. Everyone moves at a different pace. It takes the human brain about 25 years to fully functionally develop. This is also influenced by age, where you're from, how you were raised. So trying to compete with someone who isn't myself is preposterous. It's impossible, because how can I know them like I know myself? I came to the realization that I am not behind. I'm going at my own pace. Trying to force myself to match someone else's ideals isn't what's intended for me. Every day we are moving forward into the future, furthering technology, coming up with new medicine, constantly evolving, which is only possible because we are all individuals. We're all different from one another. It would be a shame if everyone was the same. Nothing would change. We wouldn't progress. The aspect of humanity that sets us apart is that we're individuals. Though some of us might look similar, genetically, we're not the same. We're never the same genetically. 7.53 billion people live and share this planet, and not one of them look exactly like one another. I was enlightened by this because the life I'm living is mine, and I can only accomplish what I'm capable of. Forcing myself to meet someone else's ideals isn't me living my life. It's me living their life. At the end of the day, time is just an organization tool that helps us keep track of ourselves. It helps us know where we're at. In reality, time shouldn't limit anyone. It shouldn't define you as a person, because nobody really knows how much time they have. But with whatever amount of time you have to make it count. Thank you.
My name is Sophie Dvorak. I'm a junior, and I love theater.
5, 6, 7, 8!
The idea of live theater is quite possibly one of my favorite things in this world. Characters from all walks of life singing in unity and harmony, the beauty of a choreographed dance routine in a scene from everyday life, actors in another faraway world, yet close enough to touch. Every element in a live theatrical performance, from the musicians tucked under the stage to the sound designers up in the booth to the actors out in front, is intricately woven together to create a beautiful and brilliant experience. I believe that though not everyone considers themselves a theater person, there is still something to be learned from live theater, particularly musicals. The Broadway musical is an entity that has grown, flourished, and changed dramatically over the past 80 years. Despite, or perhaps because of this vast change, the Broadway musical remains a universal constant. From nursing home residents tapping their toes to Oklahoma, to students like you making TikToks to Beetlejuice, musicals are prevalent in nearly all cultures and age groups. It's incredible to me the great variety of music that exists within the genre of musical theater. Broadway soundtracks contain styles of jazz, classical, rock, folk, or even make use of pre-existing music, the way Mamma Mia did with ABBA. However, despite the great diversity of musicals, they all tend to share a basic structure that binds them together. It's the combination of this diversity yet unity, this flashiness yet simplicity, that makes musicals such a unique and powerful art form.
Musicals have changed with time, yes, but at their core, they are united by one beautifully simple structure. I could go on about the differences between various musicals for days, but today, I'd like to focus on the similarities. Yes, musicals are wonderful in their diversity, but their core structure is the foundation upon which nearly every musical is built. It's quite a beautiful thing. Given that, by their final stages, musicals are shrouded in costumes, lights, and scenery that absorb all the senses, it's very interesting to see just how similar each show is when all these layers are stripped away. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite you to join me in this endeavor, deconstructing the Broadway musical. To take this journey, we'll be looking at the classic song map of a Broadway musical. We'll be following a bare-bones list of the main 8 types of musical theater songs and analyzing the role that each song plays in the grander scheme of the musical. The beginning of any creative art form is often the hardest part. A musical's opening number has to grab the audience's attention, exciting enough to make them want to see what happens next, but not so complicated that they're overwhelmed. Let's take a look at one successful opening number and see why it works.
We fought with him.
Me, I died for him. Me, I trusted him.
Me, I loved him.
And me, I'm the damn fool that shot him.
There's a million things I haven't done, but just to pay.
What's your name, man?
Alexander Hamilton.
This is a classic example of an opening number. It gives each principal character a chance to shine and tell us a snippet of their story. We are introduced to the main people we need to know and are given a hint at their relationships. We are told how the story begins and how it ends, but are missing everything in between. That's the show we'll see, the journey from beginning to end. Alexander Hamilton does a great job with making the audience comfortable with each character and hinting at the drama that is to ensue, inviting the audience to join in. Next comes the I Want song. The I Want song is a song where character development really begins. Early in the show, the I Want song is traditionally performed by the principal character, in which the audience learns all their aspirations. This is the song where we find the character's end goal, backstory, and vulnerabilities. We are able to sympathize with them, and from this point on, we want to follow their journey and hope for them to achieve their goals. This is a perfect example of an I Want song. Our heroine, Elphaba, reveals to us that she yearns to work alongside the illustrious wizard and be celebrated as an accepted member of Ozian society. From this point forward, we watch Elphaba work to meet the wizard, and all of her actions in the show are affected by this singular goal. Next, we have the noise. The noise is the exciting, fun part of the musical. It tends to contribute less to individual character development and more to the overall ambiance of the show, featuring large groups and ensemble members. The noise takes a break from the gritty parts of the show and lets the audience relax and let themselves breathe in the energy. It's a high-energy boost that gets the audience tapping their toes and humming for days. This song tends to occur towards the middle of the first act and is filled with energy and, traditionally, the entire cast of a show, complete with dance breaks and key changes. Newsies is unique in that so many of its songs feature a large ensemble, but Carrying the Banner definitely fits the criteria for the noise. The audience is able to relax and drink in the daily life of a newsboy in 1899 New York City. Carrying the Banner is filled with flashy dancing and is a very upbeat song in general, with a heavy focus on the ensemble. The principal characters are, for a moment, not the focus, as the goal of the song is to set the scene, mood, and ambiance of the show and its setting. Next, let's focus on the villains. The villains number can be a variety of things and is one of the most interesting numbers in a show. Many times, this number allows the audience an opportunity to witness the events in the story from a different perspective. What are the villains' motivations? Are they really so evil? A villain's number can be a secondary I want song, this time from another character's perspective. A villain's number can take place at several points throughout the show, but is often towards the middle of the first act.
Safe behind bars, I will never rest. Till then, this I swear.
Les Mis, based on the novel by Victor Hugo, takes place in 19th century revolutionary France. Among other characters, it primarily follows Jean Valjean, a petty thief who, after serving 19 years of labor, broke his parole and set himself on a new path, one of goodness and purity. The character most widely regarded as the villain of the show is Inspector Javert, a police officer whose life goal is to recapture Jean Valjean, as Javert believes that the law is the highest form of power to be adhered to. Stars is Javert's solo and serves as his I Want song. It discusses Javert's obsession with the law and that he can never truly feel satisfied until he has apprehended the criminal Valjean. The Act 1 finale is my personal favorite number. It sums up everything that's happened in the first half of the show and reminds us of all the loose ends that still need to be tied up before the end of the second half. We generally hear from every character, as well as the ensemble, as this is the climax of the show. The main character needs to make a final, crucial choice, and that tends to happen during this number.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am Alexander.
Non-stop allows us to hear from every character about their status following the events of the first act. How have they changed? Where are they going now? We still focus on Hamilton, however. He must make a choice regarding his priorities, family or politics. All of the voices in his head have led him up to this moment, and we hear them singing over each other as the song reaches its climax, only to end with Hamilton echoing the chant from his I Want song, reminding us of his ambition and that it will continue to drive him through the rest of the show. Generally, Act 2 openings give the audience a change of scene. The goal is to ease the audience back into the story by opening on a new person, place, or event. Because the first act tends to end with a climax or a somewhat gloomy and dramatic plot point, starting the second act with a light and cheerful number is a good way to provide comic relief to help the audience feel comfortable.
Sell some cookies, hike by hike, song by song. The Girl Scouts helped my heart grow strong. They had my back if anything went wrong with me.
Act 1 of Beetlejuice ended with our hero, Lydia, summoning a demon from hell. Quite a dark spot. However, the opening of the second act is almost over-the-top happy and cute. We are introduced to a new character, an unsuspecting Girl Scout who is selling cookies. Of course, she inevitably crosses paths with Beetlejuice himself, but the point of her song is to switch up the mood and ease the audience back into the dark world of Beetlejuice. A musical's 11 o'clock number tends to be one of the most important and pivotal moments in the show. It's a number that occurs late in the final act of the show, in which a principal character has a major realization. This epiphany is the final boost that pushes the character to the final events, whatever they may be. Or, sometimes, the character summarizes the events of the show and reflects on their life and future. Either way, the 11 o'clock number is an important step in a character either recognizing their development and growth, or recognizing a pivotal fact that will propel them to the end.
He was like me, a man in love with a woman, singing la 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 la.
Hadestown is based on the tragic Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. In short, Orpheus is the son of a muse who is gifted with musical abilities that have the potential to make spring come again, in a world where everything is all wrong. Because of this gift, he spends nearly all of his time working on writing the perfect song to make spring come. When his lover, Eurydice, finds herself in the underworld, Hadestown, Orpheus travels there and begs Hades, the king of the underworld, to let her go. At this moment, Orpheus finally finishes the song that he's been working on for the entire show and sings it for Hades. Orpheus's performance of Epic 3 is the climax of all of his efforts since the beginning of the show. It is a beautiful song that changes the course of the entire show. Because of the beauty of the song, Hades is incredibly moved, enough so that he offers Orpheus the chance to take his lover home. There are many ways that a show's finale can be done. The audience has just been through quite an ordeal, and depending on the show, they are in need of certain things. Sometimes a summary of all the events is in order. Sometimes all the characters gather to look at the future, and sometimes they gather to reflect on the past.
But he doesn't get enough credit for all the credit he gave us.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Every other founding father's story gets told. Every other founding father gets to grow old.
And when you're gone, who remembers your name? Who keeps your flame? Who tells your story? Who tells your story? Who tells your story?
This finale is equal parts beautiful and heartbreaking. It also mirrors the opening in that we hear individually from every character about their story and relationship with Alexander Hamilton. The finale does a really nice job in summarizing and reflecting on the past, but also looking towards the future in a more general sense. There you have it, the most simplistic foundation of the Broadway musical. It never fails to amaze me how, despite the differences in music style, source material, and plot, all musicals still mirror one another. Similarly, another wonder of musicals as an art form is that they allow all characters of all different backgrounds and goals to sing as one. Take, for example, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. Political rivals, deadly adversaries, enemies in every sense. Yet, in Hamilton, the two sing the same melodies to the same rhythms. Musicals show us that despite all of our differences as human beings, we're all still singing the same song. We all have the ability to work together to overcome our differences and create something beautiful. Some people may prefer Mean Girls, others South Pacific, and some might not enjoy musicals at all. But never forget that whether you're a Regina George or a Nellie Forbush, you still have the same light shining inside you that builds the foundation for the music of your own life. I hope that some of you come to appreciate musical theater in the same way I do, but most of all, I want you to love the soundtrack of your life. Take that foundation that's inside of you, inside of all of us, and build upon it your song. And while our stories may seem incredibly different at first glance, a few more looks and you'll find that they all come from the same place. I'd like to leave you with this quote from one of my favorite musicals of all time, Les Mis. Do you hear the people sing? Say, do you hear the distant drums? It is the future that we bring when tomorrow comes. Thank you.
So, I'm Asian, obviously. Black hair, slanted eyes, small eyes, yellow skin. Clearly no one's gonna walk up to me and be like, yo, this chick's white. But you know, sometimes maybe that's what we want. You see, the word minority is what I fit into. And sometimes it's awesome to be different, unique, quirky. Like, you know, in elementary school, we used to write those yearbook quotes like, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Yeah, I used to Cookie Monster quote instead. But jokes aside, everyone wants to be a part of the majority. You see, ignorance is everywhere. And lucky for me, I like to say that I got to see a lot of this ignorance firsthand. Let me give you an example. People hating on me because I'm Asian. If you said you hated me because of my personality, I would be less offended because, in all honesty, it sucks. But if you're hating on me for something that I was born into and it's something that I cannot control, that is ignorance. Unjustified hate and assumptions with no basis. I mean, everyone makes assumptions. Like, I'm sure you guys have assumed like A, B, C, D, E, F, G about me already and are thinking like, who hurt this child? I'm fine, by the way, thank you. But if you're asking me things like, can you see when you smile? I mean, like, oh geez, like, yeah, I could see. You think we go blind or something whenever we think something's funny? Like, I'm smiling right now, I could see. This is the kind of stupidity we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it could be entertaining sometimes, but most of the times it's pretty infuriating. So what's my point? So far, you've just seen a random Asian girl rant about stupid people. And if you have reached that conclusion, you are on the right track. Good for you. I'm here to spread awareness about what we Eastern Asians or Oriental Asians have to deal with in terms of racism. Let me fill you guys in. So let me tell you about what I experienced in the last 2 years, not including the whole pandemic right now. So I had this amazing opportunity to go to Europe last spring and I was psyched. You know, they're like, would you like some water? Croissants, excuse me. Like, it's so cool. But when I got there, let's just say I don't really want to go back there again. We started off the morning with a pleasant greeting of ching-a-ling along a ching ching ching. What? Like, excuse me, I'm Korean, and even if I were Chinese, like, I don't think I could interpret gibberish. But we went on. We just went on. And we boarded the tourist bus. And lucky for us, we were the only Asian tourists there. Go figure. A tour guide up at the front was going down each of the seats, explaining to each passenger how to use the audio system that was connected to the bus. He was coming closer to us, but then when he reached us, he had the audacity, and I mean, he had the audacity to skip over us. Like, I can speak English very well. Thank you. And in fact, I could say excuse me in French too. Also, did I mention that after we got off the bus, we almost got mugged by a group of like 7 people. Like, they opened my fanny pack and they were trying to grab my phone and everything. And then we went to some museum that I forgot the name of, and some dude in like his 50s started talking to me. Like, he was fine at first, but then I realized that he was targeting young, vulnerable Asian girls that were walking by themselves. And I felt very creeped out. Like, I was very uncomfortable. Like, dude, you could be my dad. No, you are definitely older than my dad. And yeah, I was uncomfortable. And I've actually experienced being fetishized due to my race a couple times before this too. Apparently I'm exotic. But let's try doing the math, because I'm supposed to be good at it anyways. So if Asians make up the majority of the world, like, you guys know China has the biggest population, then why are we exotic? Am I missing something? Why am I seeing so many ads for fine, sexy, exotic Asian girls near you pop up when I like try to watch my sketchy movie from a sketchy movie site that's probably not legal? If someone says I'm cute, if someone says they like me, I personally, I don't know about you, but personally, I think it's a little weird that I have to go through that extra step of thinking, is it because I'm Asian? Besides my rants about being fetishized due to my race, there was an incident where we were playing badminton during gym and my Chinese friend got into a quarrel with a Caucasian boy on the opposite court. Not gonna lie, she could be pretty reckless with what she says, but it's not to the point where we deserve to hear, "Do you guys need a handicap? I could do this." How's this gonna help you? He was implying the reason we couldn't counter his hits was because of our limited sight. But hey, it was because we sucked, not because of our eyes. He also told my friend that her teeth were like the stars, yellow and far apart. Another Asian stereotype. Enlightening. At least it was creative. So, lesson of the day. Let's be civilized people. Why be racist? Why not just be the person that likes rainbows, teddy bears, bakes, cookies, unicorns, etc.? I don't even know, but I'm not the person that's going around asking people, do you eat dog? No, I don't eat dog or bat, bigot. And I don't like BTS, and I don't know Kung Fu, and in fact, I could see fine when I smile. My Asian friend over here? No, we're not related. Are my math grades good? No, I just failed my math test. I pulled a 38.8 repeating. Oh, out of 100, if that wasn't clear. No, I'm not related to that other park, you know. You know someone that's Korean? Honey, I don't care. So here's the punchline. Setting aside the fact that we seem to be the punchline with your rice jokes, your Asian accent jokes, your Ni Hao Kailan jokes. Dear ignorant people, how about this time you try to open your eyes? Thank you.
Hello there, my name is Izzy Cowan, and I am a junior at Shaker High School. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share something that's important to me with you, and I hope that you find this interesting and informative, and I also hope that everyone watching is staying safe and healthy. All my love goes out to you. There is a plague sweeping through our freshwater bodies and oceans, a silent plague. It's so silent, in fact, that many people haven't actually heard of it. When I tell people what I want to do for a living, I say, well, I want to go into research on eutrophication, and most people don't know what that is. This surprises and worries me, considering that it's one of the most threatening issues to water quality today. Even though I've always been very passionate about the environment, I'll be honest, I didn't know what eutrophication was until I was a freshman in biology class. By the by, shout out to my incredible biology teacher, Mrs. Cole. Somewhere in my fond memories of that class, I can see us all sitting at the edge of our chairs, waiting to grab the slip of paper with our preferred topic for the quarter project written on it from the front counter. I could feel my classmates tensing up behind me. It was a little like the Hunger Games, except you pick the slip yourself that determines whether or not you're going to be tribute. I wasn't fast enough to get ocean pollution or forest degradation. The only slip left said, Eutrophication. That's got to be right. And so, here I am today, trying to make some sense of the issue and spread some awareness. Eutrophication is when an unusually large amount of nutrients in the water leads to an overgrowth of algae or cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria use sunlight to make their food, just like algae and plants do, but they are much older, tougher, and nastier. They form blue-green layers of gunk that smells on the surface of pond, lake, and even ocean water. Besides being visually unappealing, they wreak havoc on the environment. Naturally, these things have to die eventually, and when they die all at once and sink to the bottom of the body of the water in late fall, where bacteria eat them up, and in the process, consume all the oxygen down there. This is what creates dead zones, or zones of no oxygen, and without oxygen, there's no life, which makes eutrophication a terrible fish-killing machine. Oh, but cyanobacteria are armed with much more than just this backlash after death. They have the ability to wage chemical warfare. Many cyanobacteria release toxins that can cause asthma-like effects upon breathing in fumes, and even life-threatening ailments upon consumption, such as liver failure, stomach issues, and even paralysis. It's all too easy for dogs with oblivious owners to consume water containing toxic cyanobacteria, and far too easy for oblivious humans to consume shellfish that have filtered toxins from the water. In August 2019 in North Carolina, 3 dogs died after playing in a pond covered in cyanobacteria. The cause was liver failure and seizures, which began 15 minutes after leaving the pond. I don't know if any of you remember about a year or so ago when the news was blowing up with pictures of dead dolphins and whales washed up on Florida beaches. Well, that was a result of red tide, which is a name for a bloom of dinoflagellates, which are a class of algae-like protists that release toxins. They're similar to cyanobacteria, but they're not quite the same thing. Because they are a threat to life, harmful algal blooms can potentially cause the extinction of certain species. Organisms that are more resistant to cyanotoxins, low oxygen, and also to the lack of light penetrating the water caused by the dense mat of plant matter at the surface will survive, and the organisms that are less resistant or are dependent on less resistant organisms will not. There have been a few interesting developments relating to lessening the effects of these ocean eaters, but many of these have negative effects on the rest of the ecosystem, like copper algicides, which can kill cyanobacteria and algae, but also kill important plants and birds. Another rather peculiar approach used in Korea in the fishing industry is spraying massive amounts of red clay onto the surface of the water so that it latches onto the algal cells and kills them. Control of the cyanobacterial population using viruses called cyanophages is a consideration, but it's a risky and rather untouched domain. Biocontrol is, of course, also risky, as introducing a foreign animal into an ecosystem could end up doing more harm and damage than the harmful cyanobacteria or algae themselves. One very promising approach is hydrogen peroxide. That's right, the stuff you buy from the drugstore and use to clean your cuts. When hydrogen peroxide is exposed to sunlight and water, it creates radicals that can destroy cyanobacterial cells. Even better, it is a more powerful killing agent against cyanobacteria than against the healthy algae of the ecosystem that are important to the food chain because of the internal structure of cyanobacteria being more exposed and also because of certain enzymes that cyanobacteria lack. When used in the proper amount as so not to kill the other algae, hydrogen peroxide can be an extremely effective and harmless way to wipe out harmful cyanobacteria, at least for a couple of months before it has to be reapplied. However, hydrogen peroxide in the concentration necessary to subdue cyanobacterial populations in entire water bodies is quite expensive. And not all industries and water management services that need this help have this type of money to dispense. So they tend to opt for cheaper, more well-known approaches like the copper. Making the hydrogen peroxide approach cheaper is something we should definitely be moving toward, and that's where, hopefully, I'm going in the future. I'm currently working with a team of researchers from RPI and IBM to construct an automated wireless-linked device that will release hydrogen peroxide according to the phycocyanin concentration in the water and communicate to a website. Phycocyanin, by the way, is a pigment that is found in all cyanobacteria. As much as I love my work, despite everything I just mentioned, the most effective way to reduce eutrophication is to nip it in the bud at its cause. Nutrient filtration systems have been very helpful in preventing excessive nutrients from going into our water bodies, but much of the problem is already in place, and again, this simply isn't cost-effective for many waste operations and runoff systems. Additionally, the preventative approach, although effective, may take years to show results, and most ecosystems, many of them ticking time bombs, just don't have that kind of time. The incredible diversity of marine life is a source of mystery and wonder and love for our blue planet. Protecting it will take a massive collective effort, but there are some small changes you can make to help reduce the problem. First, you can avoid buying pork products as much as possible. Purchasing pork products just encourages more of the confined animal feeding operations that pig farming is notorious for. Not only are such operations inhumane, they lead to concentrated nutrient runoff that eventually reaches bodies of water, causing algal blooms to spring up like weeds. An additional product to try to avoid is corn, as current corn farming practices produce huge quantities of fertilizer runoff. Corn oil, for example, can be swapped out for another vegetable oil. Another thing you can do is check your household products, like laundry detergents, soaps, and especially lawn fertilizers for nitrogen and phosphorus. These two nutrients are the main culprits for causing eutrophication because algae and cyanobacteria love them, so it's best to avoid them if at all possible. Try to buy food that is in season and local, reducing the need for fossil fuel expenditure during transport, as that introduces nitrogen into the atmosphere that eventually precipitates into water bodies. Finally, please share this information with somebody else. The more we all know about this issue, the more we can try to prevent it, and the more we can avoid the life-threatening harms it presents. You, just one person, could save a pet's life by spreading the word. 100 people could petition for preventative measures against eutrophication in a lake and save an entire ecosystem. 1 million people could save an entire lake system. 1 billion people could save an entire ocean. And 7.7 billion of us could save an entire planet. Let's work together, not with the goal of dealing with this issue so that we can push it into the background and suppress it, but with the goal of continuing to advance our knowledge of this phenomenon and using the power of science and human motivation to push it to the foreground so that we can face it head on. For the sake of ourselves, our pets, our children after us, and the beautiful world we live in, let's work together. Thank you.
I'm sure most of you wouldn't mind. You all probably identify the same way. But what if I were to say that I actually identify as a lesbian? Still, I feel like most of you wouldn't mind. You would actually be supportive of me, but not everyone would be. I'm not saying any of you would treat me differently, but there are people out there who would treat me differently. It's as if learning that I'm a lesbian changes who I am completely, even though it doesn't. I'm still the same student, musician, pet owner that I was before I said I was a lesbian. There are just some people who would treat me differently. There are even some people who would hate me, who would call me slurs, who would even wish death upon me because of this one label. This one label can completely change someone's perspective of me. Now, before I continue, let me set a scene for you. It's the summer of '69, and you live in New York City. There's opportunities around every corner and liveliness all around you. It's early morning, and you're driving through Lower Manhattan on your way to work, and the song "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" by the Rolling Stones is playing on the radio. You are dreading the idea of going to work. But you know that at the end of the day, you'll get to see some friends that you haven't seen in a while. You're very excited for that, and all is going very smoothly as you're cruising down the street when all of a sudden you witness police officers outside the Stonewall Inn, the gay bar 2 blocks away from your work. You see a police officer dragging a struggling woman out of the bar, and a moment later, you see an empty beer bottle fly from the hands of one of the bar members and into the head of one of the officers, shattering upon impact. That struggling woman was Marsha P. Johnson, and the person who threw that beer bottle was Sylvia Rivera. These are 2 transgender women whose actions sparked a turning point in the LGBT community. These riots at Stonewall were a pivotal moment in this fight for justice. Now, bring yourself back to today, 50 years after the Stonewall riots, and think about yourself right now. Right now, you live in a world that is much more progressive than in 1969. You live in a country where same-sex relationships aren't illegal. You live in a country where you can marry whomever you want. But in this country, injustice still exists. There are cake shop owners who will deny wedding service to same-sex couples. There's Chick-fil-A, one of the largest fast food chains in the country, whose owner claims that marriage should be between men and women, and who donates money to anti-LGBT churches and organizations. There are children out there who are disowned by their parents simply because they aren't straight and they aren't what society views as normal. These are reasons why people struggle to come out. It's the anxiety that builds up when they are unsure of how people may react to them coming out. And also the fact that the idea that straight is the default is ingrained into our minds. So what do we do to combat this? How do we make people feel safe when they come out? Well, we could just force everyone to, be more welcoming and accepting of the LGBT community. But let's face it, that's unrealistic. That's just a fantasy. Realistically, what we could do is we could improve education on the LGBT community in schools. In our history classes currently, what are we focusing on? We are focusing on the histories of straight white men. Let's face it. But what about the histories of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and the events that took place at Stonewall? I literally didn't even know the Stonewall riots happened until about last year. And also, what about sex ed? Most people who went through sex ed were not educated on same-sex relations. I was lucky enough to have been educated on that topic in my health class, but many people weren't as lucky. And that's part of the issue too. The most logical approach to getting people to stand by a movement is by educating them. If more people are educated on the history of the LGBT community, then those people can educate others. And this will cause more people to understand the community and to respect it and accept it. So now I bet you're wondering, what can you as an individual do? Well, there are a few things you can do actually. Post on social media. Be vocal about your views. Start a discussion with someone who might have opposing views. Social media is a huge platform where you can get any message across. So get your message across. You can donate to the Trevor Project, which is an organization that helps save young LGBT lives, prevents suicides, etc. And the least you can do is just support anyone you know who is in the LGBT community. Make them feel safe and accepted. Let them know that no matter what, they matter. And that they aren't weird like society tells them. I really hope that someday, with more education, the LGBT community can become more normalized. But until then, continue to love and respect everyone. It's the least you can do. Thank you.
Periods. Not the punctuation marks, the other kind of periods. Some of the words that come to mind when we talk about periods in public: gross, disgusting, bloody, painful, dirty. Getting your period is a natural biological process for about half the global population, where there is a discharge of blood and other materials from the lining of the uterus on a monthly basis. In total, the average woman has her period for 2,335 days of her life. That's nearly 7 years. Yet for some reason, we as a society fail to recognize this. Periods have been stigmatized as filthy and ugly for centuries, which creates these dangerous constructs around menstruation and menstruators. Back home in India, when one of my friends got her period for the first time, she was forced to stay at home as if she were something disgusting that needed to be hidden from the public's eye. As I later learned, in many parts of conservative India, girls on their period are treated as dirty or impure and are prohibited from going in public, and they feel forced to follow this stigma because of fear of public shaming. To them, periods don't just end sentences. Periods end their education. What was even more shocking to me was that this isn't just a developing country problem. Even in this country, menstruators face the stigma. According to the article, Cycles of Shame, many girls report shame about being seen with a menstrual product or, worse yet, about bleeding through clothing, and some adolescent girls report that they are embarrassed simply by the fact that they menstruate. Did you know that there are about 5,000 slangs and euphemisms for periods? Aunt Flo is in town. It's Shark Week, people. Riding the Crimson Wave. And most popular time of the month. It's not necessarily the euphemisms that's the problem. It's the stigma and secrecy surrounding periods that leads to a much bigger problem: period poverty. The hush around periods makes millions of women quietly suffer through period poverty. Essentially, period poverty means not being able to afford products like tampons or pads. Although a lot of us are privileged enough to not be in this situation, a huge demographic of women have to make impossible life choices every month just to survive their cycles. That's approximately 16 million American women, 1 in 8, according to a 2016 U.S. Census data, battling poverty every day. To make matters worse, menstrual hygiene products are expensive and are treated as non-essential items in many states, which means there's a luxury tax attached to these products. Which means in states like Alabama and Texas, you can grab a Snickers bar tax-free, but menstrual products like pads and tampons are taxed. Because of this tax, American women end up spending an additional $150 million per year on menstrual products. In total, Americans spend about $2 billion on menstrual products per year. In addition to period poverty, period shame and misinformation undermine the well-being of women and children. This leaves them more vulnerable to gender discrimination, child marriage, exclusion, violence,
and untreated health problems. This also reinforces myths and stereotypes about menstruation and menstruators, and they get labeled as overreacting or demanding or irrational when it's that time of the month. Now that we know the consequences of period shame, what can we do about it? What can we do to end this period stigma? Here's what we can do.
Talk about it. The best way to destigmatize this natural process is by openly speaking about it and normalizing it. Neither females or males should feel ashamed to talk about periods. This can be done through encouraging conversations in health ed classes. The more conversations we have, the easier it becomes to stop the spread of misinformation and stereotypes. We can also discuss these issues surrounding period stigma in current events, like at your school, college, university, etc. This can help spread awareness on the consequences of period shame, increase access to menstrual hygiene products. As I mentioned earlier, there are so many people who cannot afford to buy basic menstrual hygiene products, so they're forced to use these unhygienic alternatives. One of the ways we can help increase access to period products is by supporting charities or local homeless shelters and donating money or menstrual hygiene products if possible. Here's a list of some charities that accept donations. I highly recommend you guys go check it out. Or you could start your own drive for menstrual hygiene products at your school or local library. For example, a group of menstrual hygiene activists and I started a nonprofit called Period Proud. Our organization is dedicated to educating people about the ways we can end period stigma and poverty. Last summer, we held a drive for menstrual products, and then we gave all the donations to our local homeless shelter. You too can totally start your own initiative. It's a really cool experience. And finally, remove the tampon tax. Be sure to check your local laws to see if your state has the tampon tax. And if it does have the tampon tax, then please sign local petitions to pressure local legislature to remove this tax. The removal of this tax will really help a lot of people be able to afford essential menstrual hygiene products.
As Hillary Clinton said, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. I believe that menstruators have the right to talk about their periods to anybody without being shamed. Today, I hope that I have informed you about the various consequences of period stigma, and more importantly, I hope that I've encouraged you, parents, teachers, girls, and boys, to take an initiative to end period stigma. And most importantly, I hope that you can stay period positive and period proud. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining our virtual TEDx live stream tonight. Though circumstances made our live conference not possible this year, we are grateful for the opportunity to share these speeches online. We hope you all have a wonderful end to the school year. Thank you.